Greetings, greenhouse people. It is time for another episode of Tech on Demand, where our goal is always to help you grow your best crops ever. And if you don't receive Grower Talks and Green Profit, it's about time to subscribe. We've been producing these magazines for at least 75 years now. So now is the time to subscribe. And speaking of subscribing, be sure to subscribe to the Tech on Demand podcast on your favorite app. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, and more. Once you subscribe, you will never miss an episode. And I am going to release this one as a video and a podcast, so you can choose to watch or listen to both. I'm your host, Bill Calkins, and this time I'm really excited to be joined by a fantastic guy who knows a heck of a lot about plants and how to grow them to their fullest potential. Michael Wiebe from Sakata, one of the leading seed breeding companies in the world. Michael, welcome to Tech on Demand.
Thank you, Bill. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm a active listener of the podcast, so it's kind of one of those cool moments to be able to see that thing come up on my phone when it does finally get released and be like, oh yeah, I got to be a part of that one.
Well, yeah, and in the middle of spring, I would imagine you'll probably have some driving time or time on airplanes to check it out, like a lot of our listeners. Well, I definitely appreciate that, and I appreciate you being here for a really important topic: producing SuperCals for fall to extend the seasons. Real quick before we start, let me share Michael's bio. He is the Product Technical Services Manager at Sakata Seed America. He's been there for 5 years. Prior to that, he spent 8 years at Smithers Oasis Company on both the research and sales teams. He earned a Bachelor's of Science in Horticulture, Biology, and Plant Pathology from Pennsylvania State University. And he's here today to discuss the ins and outs of growing SuperCal petunias and why you should consider adding them to programs outside of just peak spring if you haven't done that already. So, Michael, the stage is yours. But real quick, let me just say that when you lead our Grower Talks team through the Sakata facility at spring trials, we always learn a lot about product positioning, the cultural and technical tips and tricks that growers need to know to have success with the crops. So I know you're going to present some really good information about SuperCal fall production. So to the listeners and the viewers, watch, save, and share with your team. But Michael, go ahead, take it away, and I'll jump in with any questions and comments as you go.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, no, it's always so much fun seeing you and the team come out to our facility every cast, and to get you guys are one of the microphones to the rest of the industry. So to be able to take you guys through that and get excited and show you what we're excited about every spring is an absolute pleasure. So I appreciate the opportunity for that. But let's talk about SuperCal petunias for a little bit. We've got a few minutes to be able to break that down, and not just SuperCal petunias, but specifically for fall production, right? SuperCal petunias it's not a new series for us. We were, I believe, one of the first. If not, I think maybe we were the first to introduce a petchoa, even though we call SuperCal petunias a petunia, to introduce a petchoa to the market, which is a petunia and calibrachoa cross. It's an intergeneric cross, and the reason why we saw a need and saw an opportunity to introduce this line way back when we did, I think that might have been, it's past 10 years ago now when the first iteration of SuperCals came out. But we saw an opportunity with kind of a best of both worlds approach from both of those genera. And because, anybody who's listening to this knows petunias and calibrachoa now. Petunias are well known across the world for being, kind of the show dog, I guess, amongst those two solanaceous genera, right? Big old showy flowers, profound growth, great vigor. Usually they have, great vigor. They've got the ability to mound really well or spread really well, depending on how they've been bred and what they've been trained to do, right? But they are the showy ones. And then you've got calibrachoa, which can be in their own respect very showy as well. But what made them, I think, so much more popular as time progressed was the discovery of their resilience to so many things, right? Their resilience to cooler temperatures earlier on, their resilience to really hot, humid, wet, sticky temperatures later on after, the summer rains have moved into a given area and temperatures are through the roof, and you've got high temperatures and the rain that can be, just kind of a petri dish situation for powdery mildews and botrytis and all of that stuff. And what we've seen is Calibrachoa's ability to hang on and still display their flowers after many of the petunias in the market have kind of those diseases, those pathogenic things have taken their toll on a lot of petunias out there, right? So you've got, and so that is kind of why we saw the opportunity to take those two genera and hopefully be successful with crossing them, which we were a little over 10 years ago. And you've got the best of both worlds like that. You've got the showiness of the petunias and the kind of that bulletproof plant profile that is Calibrachoa. And that is what we have in mind whenever we are upgrading or introducing new genetics into this individual series, right? And those attributes in SuperCal petunia are kind of what make it the number one go-to petunia type plant to produce, not just early on. If you're on this presentation, chances are you've heard me blab about SuperCals for spring production as well, but also for later season, right? After things have really gotten going and the summer months have set in, a lot of there's a lot of poinsettias, there's a lot of mums under glass and poly or on your concrete, a lot of celosia, that kinds of things. We have historically kind of left the petunia class to the wayside because we're not really interested in growing that stuff when we know that it can get sick from the hot and wet conditions, right? Well, SuperCal offers the opportunity to not just share space in the same container with a lot of those things that people are interested in growing and buying later in the season, but also carve out its own place in the production program, right? To be its own landscape plant when you want to plant something still in July and hoping that it has the ability to hold on all the way until November. And that's kind of what I'm going to show off here with these slides, right? So,
and I love the idea of bringing, as the summer ends and you start moving into fall, but I mean, it's still hot. So, July, August is bringing in SuperCals, whether they're in baskets or to plant, because a lot of those, plants that you planted in the spring annuals might have like burned out by then. You probably went away on vacation, forgot to water. The neighbor kid who was watering maybe forgot because they were at the pool all day, and you need something to replace. And I think, like you said, going along with fall crops, Calibrachoa our petunias and Calibrachoa are so perfect with the colors, and SuperCal has that awesome kind of fallish color range that a lot of series don't have. You guys have the history, and you have literally shown the environmental tolerance of SuperCals year after year at spring trials, and I hope people have paid attention and seen it in your booths at trade shows, because that environmental tolerance is really, I think, where these things shine.
Yeah, thank you. One of the things that we have done in years past at Cast Right is build what we call the rain box.
Yeah,
we have had a couple of members on our team through the years. It's the responsibility has kind of been passed around a little bit, but every now and then you draw the lucky straw to build this rain box, right? That mimics the summer rainy conditions, and all we do is just rain water on a couple of gallon SuperCals versus some other petunias that are out there in the market, and show the ability to bounce back from those rains, and not just from the strong stems, but also from the fact that SuperCals largely have a slightly less pubescent leaf. Their leaves aren't quite as hairy and sticky. They also, for the most part, have slightly thicker petals in their bloom. And so if you get a less sticky leaf with a slightly stronger bloom, you remove and you mitigate the effects of that, petal to leaf stickiness. And where you get a lot of your powdery mildew and your botrytis is in that watery layer between the bloom and the leaf sticking together. So the least amount of time that you can keep those things from doing that to themselves, the less of that pathogen pressure you're going to have. And that's kind of maybe a little bit of the magic behind that disease resistance that SuperCal offers, right? But yeah, you had mentioned you had mentioned our color profile inside of SuperCals, right? Um, we initially came to market with a number of colors that became very, very popular. And we have always had maybe one or two things to offer for both the early season slate as well as the late season slate. We've only continued to build on that as this program has progressed in its maturity. Not just offering brand new colors that fit into both the early and late season sale slots, but also improving the ones that were already there. I know some of you out there, listeners and viewers, you probably got your hands on some SuperCals earlier when we first introduced them, and you may have discovered relatively quickly that petchoa breeding is not the easiest breeding there is. It is anytime you have intergeneric breeding, it is rather difficult breeding. It is complicated breeding that takes a lot of finesse at the R&D level. But in order to try and solve, some of those pain points for growers out there as well as consumers out there, breeders like us, we come to market with a collection of genetics, something that we know is going to one day be completely all buttoned up and totally uniform, bench run the whole thing in timing, size, in vigor, in habit, all of those things. But when we first bring it out, especially with the harder bred stuff, like I said, it's more of maybe a collection. There are some nuances in there to know color to color about how to produce it. And in the time that we've taken since we first introduced, along with, my own education, my own kind of Sakata education, I guess if you will, we've done a lot of work in putting together those programs, not just improving the colors, but also trying to get the word out there to growers on where colors fit, and not just where and in what specific container, but also when, what time in the year, not just in color, but also in attributes, right? So we're going to get into that a little bit later. But just for this, for the example, for this slide, for the viewers out there, you have, if you've made it to cultivate, this front doorstep of this restaurant might be a little familiar to you. I think it's right down the street from the convention center in Columbus, Ohio. And a number of years back, I am not sure that they did this on purpose, but that restaurant planted a large box planter of SuperCal on one side of their front door, and they had a traditional petunia placed on the other side of their door. And you can really see they just kind of set up a nice little accidental trial for us, right? Where they and then they let the elements do their work. The July Ohio elements, right, do their work of the heat and the rain and everything, and showed how well they're able to hold up in through those conditions. And then conversely, my next slide for my viewers out there shows colder temperatures. Now, this particular planter was located in Colorado, so at high elevation, and this was in spring, or maybe not, maybe summer for some of the southern growers by this point in the year, right? But it's still spring for the people at elevation. But this is a slide to make sure that you are aware of for not just the early spring, but this is where things are very important later in the season as well, and why these genetics are able to hold up as we get towards Thanksgiving even, right? So SuperCal is not just very heat and rain tolerant. It also has the ability to handle cold snaps. For my listeners out there, we're showing a SuperCal planter that had been snowed on and made it down to a dip of almost 25 degrees Fahrenheit overnight. And then the very next photo shows how well it was able to bounce back, losing minimal, if any, blooms on it at all. And, when the sun did finally come out the next day, how pretty it was able to look, even after looking pretty sad just 24 hours prior, right? And like I said, these are things that you have to consider as we move out of spring, but just as much if you're doing a season extender for fall as we move into that fall season, especially at the latitude that you and I live, Bill, up in the Great Lakes states. this is something you have to consider when bringing on something to your fall programs, right? Okay. One last, I believe this might be the last one before we get into the kind of the technical nitty gritty, is showing the resilience of these genetics. This is a newer one for us. It's only a few years old. We call this one SuperCal Premium Red Maple. Okay. And this is showing when the container was younger in its stage in July 1st, but then how well it was able to hold on. It did not split. It just continued to get better and better as it moved into November 1st. Now, this one, I will tell you geographically, this one is upstate New York. So July, August, September, October, and finally November are not the kindest months. Right. As far as weather goes in upstate New York. If you have a beautiful day, it can be opposed the very next day by a violent rainstorm, as well as when you're living on the east side of bodies of water. October can get rather interesting, right? So the fact that these genetics are able to stick it out and not just survive but thrive in these conditions, we at Sakata knew that we were onto something back when we first started breeding this, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely beautiful. I mean, to think that you could have a red petunia basket or pot like that, after Halloween is absolutely crazy. But that is stunning, and I think that to me just shows the application of these products in the fall.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
I mean, I like mums as much as the next guy, but that is an absolutely beautiful flower packed basket container sitting in the corner of a deck. Yeah, that's a showstopper.
And great point, Bill. So, this talk is not to suggest that we try to take a bite or a chunk out of the mum market necessarily in the fall. I mean, if it happens, well, then I guess maybe I've done my job, right? But this is really to show, if you're going into the garden center for your mums, during that time of year, late July into the August months and then early September, right? If you're going in for that mum, you should not just be walking out necessarily with that mum, whether it's in the same container or whether it's in different containers. There are options for avid gardeners and enthusiasts out there to enjoy other things, especially if you're one of those individuals who's not done maybe so much homework on buying mums, and you don't buy one that's cracking color. You buy one, the ones that make the real wow at the garden center, right, are the ones in full color. But then when they finally make it home or make it into the ground, you've got what, 14, 15 days?
You got a week or two, and then
on that stuff. Yeah. So you want to bring something home later in the season that's going to continue to put a smile on your face when you walk out back or out front of your house, right? And this is one of those options that has the ability to do.
It's 2026. We're allowed to buy something different.
We're allowed to, or at least just have the options.
Change it up a little bit.
That's right. That's right. So, okay, let's get into the specifics. This is some of this is going to look like rehash. I'm going to go over just how we've broken down and positioned SuperCal in the market amongst the sea, inside of the sea of petunias, as it were, right? And then go into some of the nuances for fall production, both in color selection and in culture. Okay, so if you are only a little bit familiar with SuperCal, you probably maybe have known the name or seen the plants at independent or mass retail, right? But maybe you're not so familiar with how we have the series broken down. Well, we have two main classes of SuperCal. We call one of the classes the traditional, or we just refer to them as SuperCal. The other class we refer to as SuperCal Premium. Now, that is to say nothing other than a difference in habit. Okay, that is not to say that the premiums, even though if you look up the word premium in a dictionary, it would suggest that the premiums are better in some way than the traditional types. Well, that is not the case. The traditional types are more of a semi-trailing or spreading type of petunia, and then the premiums are more of a mounding type. They have more of a mounding habit. So that's how we have, just broken them into two separate buckets. And when we introduce a genetic, it either becomes a SuperCal or a SuperCal Premium. Okay. Some of the other things here are what we've already spoken about, right? Disease tolerance, rain recovery, and why those things are so important, both very early on in the season when you see most of your other petunias out there, as well as later on when this one kind of just stands alone and out by itself, right? So that leads into the number one topic of conversation when putting together, if you're interested in a program of SuperCal Petunia, based off of, a size of container or a season that you're looking to sell into, or even if you're, if you strayed away from our playlist series, which is, our own suggested mixes and combos, and you're looking to build your own, the number one thing that you should always start with is varietal selection, right? Always be making sure that you are not just grabbing, and this is not just for SuperCals. I mean, it is very important inside of SuperCal Petunia, but if you haven't heard one of my talks before, this is usually how I started out, right? Variety selection is always key, not just colors, okay? Not just colors, the cinnamons, the French vanillas, the red maples, the new pink star. All of those are going to look great in fall. And luckily, most of the ones that I mentioned behave great in the fall as well, but not just how it looks and what color the bloom is, but how it's going to behave in that given season or size of container, right? Speaking on behalf of Sakata Seed America, we come out every year with an attribute table, which shows things for my listeners who can't see the slide that's in front of us. It's an Excel spreadsheet that's basically been built for growers to kind of go off on their own and put together their own program. And what you have on there is, earliness of flower timing, as well as bloom size, vigor. You've got habit, you've got height and width, how they size up in a garden bed. And then you've also got, just based off of the case of availability, which, fingers crossed, we don't tend to have any issues with availability coming from the stock farms out there. But in the event that something has been sold out, or something isn't available in a really heavy week for shipping, a recommended sub, right, for a given color. So always start here. This is typically available on the Sakata Ornamentals website. If you are having trouble finding that, please reach out to any member of the Sakata Seed America team. They will be able to get you this dot.
I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. So if you check the YouTube description or the podcast show notes, you'll find a link to that chart.
Beautiful. Thank you. Okay, so first and foremost, we're going to go through just a little bit of propagation notes. This should be not necessarily new for anybody out there. This has not changed all that much. There are a couple of things that have, and I will go over those, right? So in your standard size trays, anywhere between a 72 to a 128, you're looking at, especially specific to fall production, you're looking at about 3 to 4 weeks total time from stick to transplant as a liner. This is going to speed way up for the individuals out there that are using, your KIBA sprays, your dips, the Advocate, that kind of stuff. And if you are using that, right around 200 ppm is what I see for the most part. I also have seen a response out there with heavier sprays where the leaves might crinkle a little bit, especially if you are making it over to the trays when you should be applying that stuff, which is about 48 hours after stick. So there's no roots on that stuff. You lay down that much KIBA, you're going to see a little bit of an auxin response. You see it shake that off within a couple of days. That seems to be pretty common amongst solanaceous crops that have KIBA sprayed on them when they don't have any, when they're, right away when they're real fresh in the liner. So look for that. If you use it, great. If not, that's also okay. This stuff roots relatively aggressively. especially like I said in the summertime when we're talking about that stuff. If you're earlier on in the season, that's a different webinar. But if you're way early on in the season, you might want to look at that stuff just to make things a little bit more uniform, especially if you don't or if you're not using bottom heat. If you're just rooting, on benches or on concrete that where your temperatures are, dipping into the lower 60s and you've got that a little bit cooler soil temperatures, you might want to look into, well, getting bottom heat will be wonderful, right? But if you're not able to do that, look into your KIBA sprays just to kind of enhance that rooting and enhance that uniformity. We like to suggest light after about a week on these things. If you have light right away, that's also totally fine. Just as long as you're making sure that your misting is reflective of that. Typically, if you have a lot more light on these things earlier on, you're going to need to mist quite a bit more. If you have not so much light, maybe you're holding on to your water, so just mist as needed. After about a week, you've got callus and initial rooting, so that's when you're going to start to mist only to keep turgid. Once you see those roots, that's when you start to lightly fertilize as well. I suggest about 50 to 75 ppm nitrogen of whatever you're using. I like the calcium nitrate stuff. The ammoniacal stuff might be a little bit too strong, especially if you're in a time of year where you're looking to hold on to your trays. Try not to try to stay away from the ammoniacal heavy stuff with how aggressively these are, especially in the summertime, right? A great surefire way to make sure everything is ready to rock and roll and even and branching well, especially in the summertime, is to pitch. Mow your trays back to 3 to 5 nodes. I get mixed reviews on mowing. I know some grower outfits out there, it's standard operating procedure, right? It's, that's what they do. They pick up their trays, they mow them through, and they give them about a week until they plant them. They do that to almost everything that they grow. Fine. I have some other growers out there that are not interested. They have a mower, but it collects dust for a number of reasons, right? It kind of stinks to pick your trays up twice. You'd much rather pick your trays up once and only to plant, right? And then the other thing, especially with solanaceous crops, is disease pressure, right? We want to try to keep those blades clean as much as we can, but when things are very busy, maybe we're running a little bit more trays through than we should in between cleanings. And then there's always the potential for some kind of disease outbreak when we're mowing, right? So what's an alternative? That's what I'm getting to, Bill, right? What's an alternative? We have been trialing different things that work on SuperCal for quite some time, and we have resulted on something that is not necessarily new, but something that we should return to as an industry of growers if you are using SuperCal. So I have up here for my listeners, the title of this slide is "The More Things Change, the More They Stay the Same," right? What's old is new again. Bell bottoms are back.
Yep.
For whatever you want to say, right? But yeah, we have found very good results out of a scalable, what I call a chemical pinch for SuperCal petunias. And if you're not interested if you have the quantities, or you're not interested in any kind of pathogenic pressure, maybe this is what you want to lean on, right? So I have seen tank mixing rates of B9 with Florel and then configure together. So diminazide with Ethifon and then a 6BA in a medium to moderate rates. So I don't have actual numbers up here for anybody listening. I don't have numbers on this slide because I'm very hesitant to put numbers out there because there could be growers who are up near Bill and I up in the Cleveland region, the northern Great Lakes states, that if I gave them a rate that I would suggest to someone down in Alabama, well, we might end up with an issue, right? So you all out there, your climate, your environmental conditions better than I ever will. It's because you're there in and out every day with your crops, knowing what you experience, right? And these 3 chemicals, so you have, kind of the freedom to dial up this or dial this back depending on where you are and also when you are in your year. As a general, like I said, medium to moderate. So you're looking at in the Dominizide realm, you're looking at somewhere between 1250 and 2500. Laurel, you're looking between 250 and 500, which is a big range, right? But it's a big country. And then for the configure, we're looking once again between 300 and 500-ish, right in there, right? And that's also going to change a little bit based off of the vigor nuances of this class of plants, right? So SuperCal, we've got some stronger ones, and we've got some more tame ones in there as well. So when you start to look at later on, I'm going to show off what we're talking about as far as, quart programs versus gallon programs versus basket stuff. Typically, the colors that are in the larger containers do a little bit better in larger containers, right? So those are the colors that you're going to be able to lead with the stronger rates, right? So yeah, so that's a great chemical tank mix that I found to be successful in a lot of different places in the country. If you hear this and you go, oh, maybe that's the way that I should go, reach out to me individually, and then we'll be able to dial something in, kind of tailor something to you based off of when this stuff is getting stuck and where you. Okay, so another thing that I've kind of been trying to get out there about SuperCal is its ability to do very, very well in outdoor growing conditions, right? Especially early season is one that surprises a lot of people, raises a lot of eyebrows about how cold I suggest that these things grow. Not just in hoop houses either, but out on mum pads, right? And if you are, that's early season. If you do have some space to carve out on your mum pads later on, I don't mind them outdoors later on either. And why is that? Because they're getting the harshness of everything, right? If you've got some slow release fertilizer in those containers, and it's getting rained on, pounded on with the rain and everything, but it's getting fed well enough, you're also getting full spectrum light outdoors. And that's kind of why I put out here on this slide there. They're facultative long day and irradiant plants. So the more light that you give these things, the more that's going to promote branching of them. But not only that, but overnight, even in the heat of the summertime, you're going to be able to get the coolest nights that you possibly can if you set these things outdoors, right? And cooler nights is going to kind of, slow these things down, tone them up. The highlight of the day paired with the as cool of a night as you could possibly get, I guess, will promote just that much more branching, stacking the internodes, all of the things that we like to do as an industry, right? Earlier in the season, that might affect your schedule a little bit more than it would later in the season. You're going to push your schedule maybe a couple of weeks if you do it early season, but specific to fall. No, it's more of a method of toning things, really. If anything, it's just, natural chemical. Okay. So more notes on finishing. This is, once again, this is kind of, I guess, old hat or, traditional amongst the series, what it's been this whole time, right? A very common pH range for solanaceous crops. We're looking at 5.5 to 6 as a pH, with a lighter rate of we're a lower EC, somewhere between 3/4 and 1 millisiemens, and that's at a 2-to-1 method. So that's how I'm testing things most of the time. If ECs exceed 1.5 to 2.0, 1.5 is still probably fine, but once you get up to 2.0, especially with that outdoor stuff, if you've got slow release in your media and you have a dry down event and your EC spikes, make sure that you're just over top of that stuff, leaching it out with clear water. You may not have a melting event like you would with some other crops out there, but it would definitely behoove you to get that stuff back down into a good range, right? If you're running CLF, constant liquid feed, I like things across the board to be, I know I have it written on here to be 200 to 250 parts. That is that's best in outdoor. If you have things indoor, you can be down to about 150 parts. 200 is the happy medium. That's going to get things kind of aggressive. But if we're doing if we're being diligent with our PGRs as well as our temperatures and enough light on this stuff, that's a great rate to be, especially if we are picking our CalMag formulations like a 13-2-13, a 15-5-15. High amounts of that stuff and not so much ammoniacal nitrogen. Yeah, moving on. Okay. Scheduling considerations, right? Scheduling. This is something that we have, that we built for, I think when I started reading this data, when I was putting together this presentation for you all, I started reading it. The plants per pot all make sense to me. We still have pinching considerations because this schedule was produced before we arrived at what we found with the chemical pinch as well. And then finally, weeks from transplant. There's a caveat here on our weeks from transplant, and that shows an average daily temperature ADT of 60 degrees F. So I have on here, what about when we produce in fall or in summer for fall sales, right? When the ADT is up over 75 or 70 to 80 degrees even, when things are really, really hot. So that's what we're going to kind of talk about now. I have tips for success in all 3 seasons. If you are watching this webinar, but you're thinking to yourself, and we're talking about fall sales, but you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, I mean, I've done the fall stuff. Maybe I could get a little bit better at it. But what about these things for springtime? Now that they have a lot of nice, pinks, gemstone colors, the things that do really well earlier on. I've got those notes, those tips for success as well. But specific to the early fall ship window, we are once again talking variety selection. Utilize your temp drops or your negative diff. Right? Try to go from negative diff to slow those things down if you're doing them indoors, or open up the sidewalls, open up the roof, and get the temp drop in the mornings. That can definitely help you. Monitor your internodes. Right? I've seen the happiest of SuperCals go from a half-inch internode to just over an inch. What seemed like overnight. Maybe it wasn't overnight, but when they are very happy and the night temperatures are high and they are fed well, they can start to run, and that's what we like about them ultimately for this garden performance, right? But we need to make sure that things stay a little bit tame when we're producing them. And then, choosing your feed correctly as well as using our PGRs. Okay. So let's talk about varietal selection. And I think we're getting into just the latter part of this talk, right? And producing SuperCals, building a program specific to fall, but also what size container, right? If fall landscapes are something that I feel and I've seen to be on the rise, people are still planting well into July now, especially. Bill, I can't remember if we were talking about it when we were already recording or if it was before we started recording. You had mentioned, not just planting, but replanting.
Oh, yeah.
The summer in the North and the Midwest can be a real bear on some of these things that we planted in May or June, right? July and August can be tough on those things. So maybe we're going back in to replant, right? This is an option for that. And depending on if you are planting quarts or gallons, right in, if you want that, if you want to watch something grow a little bit, these are going to be your colors for a quart program. So we've got, for my listeners out there, we've got some of the things that are a little bit more tame, I guess, as it were. Your pearl white, premium pearl white, premium caramel yellow, premium Bordeaux, premium cinnamon, premium sunset orange improved, which is a new one for us this year. And then another new one for us this year is premium pink star. Okay. Love that color. Thank you for your team's interest in pink star, Bill. I know that was one that really wowed your group out there this spring at Cast. It was one that I knew was going to be a winner. And then when I finally did see it for the first time in person, it really really, knocked my hat off a little bit. So I'm glad that you guys feel the same.
No, we definitely loved it. And so first when you put this slide up, I was like, quartz. All right. So we are going to, some people might be planting them in the ground, but I can see quartz really being useful for making combos,
Yeah.
for putting mixes together, right?
Yeah.
And you've gotten through summer. You probably lost a bunch of plants out of your big planters, like the showcase ones on your patio. I know that happens to me every year where I'm like, oh, geez, I definitely missed a week watering when we were on vacation. And now my big, beautiful planters on my patio kind of look, eh. But I can see going to the garden center and picking up quartz to refresh combos or put together new combos. In the ground. But I think gallons, like I would probably opt for gallons if I was doing a container size, but I could see quartz. There being uses for quartz as well, even for landscapers doing change outs.
Yeah, totally agree. You really kind of hit real home. You really hit home there with the stuff dying out in the bigger containers, and then just being, what can I? There are, mass retailers out there have those solutions in those, those pots that you can just kind of drop in. But if you're looking to do it yourself, if you're not finding something that's been pre-put together for you, absolutely, right? This is something that can deliver instant color into your larger patio pots right away, especially when summer has taken its toll, right? So that's why not for a summer or fall court program, right? In that program, you're looking at one plant per pot, obviously. If you're looking to do it from direct stick, you're looking at about 8 to 9 weeks, depending. Maybe my growers further south can get away with 7, depending on what their feed rate is and what their temperatures are. If you are looking to do it from liners, you're probably looking at about 6 weeks ish, give or take. And you want to lean on in production. You want to lean on moderate to heavy dayside sprays pretty soon after you plant. That does a very good job at toning them up, and then feeding at what we discussed. After that initial dayside spray, that's when we start to look at pack load drenches, right? I love pack load drenches midway through production on SuperCals because it has seen to be much better at toning these plants, but also better at avoiding shrinking your bloom size. Okay. So, for everybody out there, Dayside is great on these plants as well, but try to lean on it when you're earlier on in the plant's development, because when this thing really starts to set buds, you want to get away from Dayside because it can kind of shrink the flowers. So use both. Just know when you're going to use it, right? On a quart program, you could probably stick to in the realm of 3 to 5 parts per million pack low, just because the size of the container is on the smaller side, right? For gallons, like we've already kind of started to discuss, Bill, if you're looking for just, a plant that can be just dropped in, you're not putting together mixes or whatever, or if you are replanting stuff that you want a slightly larger plant in your landscape, this is the lineup that I would suggest, and the vigor and the habit of these plants is going to reflect that size of container. So on here, I've got a new one for us. Leading off is Premium Purple Ice. For my listeners out there, yes, the name of it is Purple Ice, but one of the nice things about it is that purple eye finishes to a nice bright white. So if you are a grower out there who's looking for a white that has just a little bit of an extra flair on it, that has good vigor on it, Purple Ice is the one for you. Premium Yellow Sun Improved, Premium Red Maple, Premium Cinnamon. You're seeing a trend here: Sunset Orange Improved, French Vanilla, and Pink Star. These are our more rustic, our fall type tones, the things that you really want to see that are going to complement, a mum program, that are going to complement a Celosia program, that are going to do very, very well in that season. So on schedule from a liner, you're looking at about 7 to 8 weeks into a gallon transplant to finish. You can direct stick these. I've seen it done. It's maybe something that you would be interested in doing, because this is the time of year. Hopefully you're not busting at the seams with poinsettias and mums, and you've got a little bit more space to lay down a slightly larger footprint earlier on. If you'd want a direct stick, you can. And you're looking at about 10 to 11 weeks, give or take, for a direct stick program there. In this program, I would be leaning on an Advocate or a Cabe IBA spray if you are direct sticking. Still one plant. It will tone well. It will branch well. You'll be just fine with one plant, but that's why I suggest the schedule that I do. The Dayside spray gets a little bit heavier on this one. You can do that 7 to 10 days after planting, and then start to lean on your pack load drenches a few weeks after that, and that's going to be in the realm of 5 parts. Things got a little bit stronger here because the vigor of these colors reflects the size. Okay. Some hanging basket stuff. We've talked about premiums a lot, right? But you may be wondering, well, where do the traditionals come in? Now, I've got both listed on here, but I love the look of a traditional where it has the ability to kind of spread and hang a little bit, right? Now, I have on this a similar looking lineup of fall colors in the premium types, but if you look over on the left side, the left lane, for spring and summer, I guess I have it put, but your customers better than we do. I'm only suggesting colors right now and habits and vigors that fit in these containers. Blue-eyed rose, cherry improved, shocking pink, lavender star. If those are things that you feel as though, especially that blue-eyed rose. That blue-eyed rose is a newer one for us. That one is, even though it's kind of a gemstony tone, boy, does it look great in September. And it has the resilience to last you all the way through. So please, make sure that you are going through the entire lineup of both SuperCal premiums and SuperCals when picking out your stuff. I just have everything broken here into what works in a container, right? From transplant to finish, you're looking at 9 to 11-ish weeks, and that's at that's at 3 to 4 plants per pot, depending on the look that you want. I say 4 when you have a bicolor in there. If it's a tricolor, you can get away with 3. A mono 3 is fine in a 10-inch. As you start to bump up in the size of the hanging basket, 12, 14-inch, you may start to look at adding your plants, right? 5 and 7 respectively to stay on that same schedule. If you're going to hang back at 3 and 4, just know that reflects more weeks in your schedule, right? Again, a Dayside spray shortly after planting. It gets a little bit stronger here, about 4,000-ish parts. And then in here is where I start to suggest maybe anywhere between 3 and 7 ppm pack low, depending on the timing after that Dayside spray that you have applied. Drench it, a few weeks after you've sprayed Dayside. And then, depending on your schedule, you may be interested in drenching it one more time. We are talking about summertime production after all. So things are warm, things are wet, things are well fed, things are very happy. So make sure that you are watching your internodes, and if it needs a second drench, go for it, right?
I do like the idea of the hanging basket for fall. There are some sort of trailing pansies on the market. I have seen like Plectranthus annual, Plectranthus in baskets, but there's not a whole lot of fall hanging basket options that you see at garden centers for that time of year. I think but everybody still has that hook on their porch, right? And guaranteed the hanging basket that you hung there on Mother's Day weekend is cooked. Like there's no way. Yeah. Unless you are amazing gardener or something, or you have picked like the absolute perfect plant. Maybe your sun patients are still there, but I doubt it. They're probably smoked by August 1st. So probably need to replace that basket in the fall.
You're right. Baskets can be tough sledding as you enter the later season. So, it's just a fantastic way of instant color, instant enjoyment. And these things, once again, if they can last you, if you could, especially with a hanging basket, that implies that it's probably underneath something, right? So Bill, it's not gonna, if you've got the stuff looking good to November 1, who's to say, especially in our area, that you can't have that stuff avoiding the snowfall and making it all the way to Thanksgiving? Because I have seen these things. So as long as remember that picture earlier on when we were talking about upstate New York? I think the backstory of that beautiful planter of red maple is about 2 weeks after that, about 7 feet of snow uh, fell on it, and that was the end of the season
Yeah, it
for
was
it,
done.
right? But had it not been for that snow, it probably would have made it all the way to Thanksgiving. So yeah, I mean, why not? Why not, right? And as far as hanging baskets as well as patio pots, this is my last slide, and it's going to just go over some mixes, right? Some mixes, and this is where I bring up our playlist series, which is are the mixes and combos that have been tailored for growers to be successful with our genetics. SuperCal was actually one of the reasons why we brought playlist out there, because it was one of the things that we tried to do to take the guesswork out of putting together your own program, from those nuances of habit and vigor and all of those things. So we these have been all trial tested. These mixes have been specifically selected to be successful for you no matter where you are in the country or when you are growing in the season, right? I put pictures of all of the ones that I would suggest for fall production because they just fit that color range, right? We've got sticks here. I'm not going to go through the components of all of them, but just make sure that you know that you can find these on sakataornamentals.com. If you go to products, it drops down into the total the range of species that we deal in. Inside of those species, inside of that list of species, you'll see playlists, and then just click it there. That goes to our playlist landing page. They will all be there, but some new ones for us. Most of these are songs. Some of them are not. But we've got a brand new one with Autumn Day, and then another new one with something in the orange. The newest component of that is the Sunset Orange Improved, which is, as far as improvements go, one of my favorites. Love that one, right? The four others that you are more, fan favorites, the ones that have been around for at least one season or more, are Bonfire Improved, Crimson and Clover, which is another fantastic one, Fire in the Sky Improved, and then Marrakesh Express. In these, the exact same culture and schedule that I talked about already for hanging baskets and patio pots. Depending on if you've got a bicolor, you might be looking at 4 plants in a 10-inch. If you got a tricolor, you can go back to 3. 12 inches and beyond, consider upping your inputs to make sure that you stay on that schedule. If not, add time to your schedule. And then similar chemical considerations, right? We've got the Dazide spray earlier on, followed up with the pack low drenches subsequently in the weeks following, right? Depending on how big your containers get, this can be where we start to talk about even a third pack load drench, but probably not, just as long as you have picked the right number of inputs to stay on schedule. That is all I had.
That is awesome. And, I've always liked SuperCals. I've heard, you guys and your team present on SuperCals for years and years. It struck me this year as we saw some petchoas at some other companies and then came to Sakata that you guys have this crazy big color range. You've been working on this for at least a decade. I mean, Chris told us, I feel like it was closer to like 15 years
I think
on
we are approaching
SuperCals.
15. Yeah.
You guys are truly the experts in this intergeneric cross. And it's fun to see that color range. I think is absolutely perfect for fall, like we've just talked about for a while now. And I know that growers have had tremendous success with SuperCals over the years. And I think that this, to me, seems like a no-brainer for growers who are always looking to extend seasons and build fall sales. Not everybody grows and sells mums these days, and I think that there is an opportunity to really bring a unique product offering, whether you're a grower retailer who's bringing them out from the back, or if you're shipping to wholesale, selling to landscapers. I think that there's a lot of opportunities here, obviously, with SuperCals. Before we close, just remind the listeners and viewers one more time how they can learn more about Sakata and reach out to you and the team.
Yeah, sure. Once again, and I appreciate you offering to put this stuff in the show notes as well, because I know it's not listed on this slide for the viewers, right? But yeah, sakataornamentals.com has is up to date with all of the varieties that we have that are released to market already, as well as all of our culture guides and culture sheets. A gentleman by the name of Bob Croft, who is a longtime member of the technical team over here at Sakata. He is one of the people that I've been under the wing of in my 5 years over here at Sakata. He's He's taught me, him and Ken Haar have taught me everything that I know. And, I'd be crazy lucky if I even learn half the stuff that they know, right? He has put together the culture sheets and the culture guides, clickable links to all of those PDFs from the individual series pages on Sakata Ornamentals. If you want to reach out to me directly because you were thinking, maybe I should put together a program either late season like we were talking, or early season, or talk about that chemical application for the pinch, whatever. For my area, my email address is mwiebe@sakata.com. And that's M as in Michael, WIEBE at sakata.com. And yeah, that's the best way to get a hold of me, as I am, especially this time of year. I'm running around pretty good.
For sure. For sure. Well, hey, I really appreciate it. I'll double your shout out to Bob Croft. Love Bob. Yeah, I've done a lot of videos with Bob, and they get a ton of views.
Yeah.
We did a Lizzie Anthus video, and I swear it had 1,000 views within the first few months. He's a rock star when it comes to deep diving into crops. So you're learning from a good one, and Ken too.
Thank you.
Well, hey, I really appreciate your time, Michael. Thank you so much. Hopefully the rest of, as we record this, it's still spring technically, but hopefully the rest of spring and summer goes well for you guys. Safe travels out there.
Thank you so much. You too, Bill. Looking forward to seeing you soon.
For sure. I'm Bill Calkins with Tech on Demand, and on behalf of Michael and the entire team at Sakata, have a fantastic season and put some of these SuperCals in your product mix for fall. Take care out there.